What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Fireside Giants. I'm your host, Anthony Rivardo, joined by my co-host, Alex Wilson. We're only a couple sleeps away from Sunday Night Football, New York Giants versus the Cincinnati Bengals. Let me just say, I can't wait for this because anytime the Giants have one of those Sunday night games, it's perfect. I get to sit and watch red zone football all day long, enjoy all of the touchdowns and the highlights, and then I get my full course meal. I get my entree. I get my New York Giants football uninterrupted. Don't have to worry about what's going on around the league, if my parlays are being cooked or not, what my fantasy team is doing. I just get to focus on the New York Giants. So it's going to be a perfect Sunday, I hope, capped off by a New York Giants win over the Bengals. That is what we are hoping to see. How do the Giants get that done? Well, it's going to be a little bit challenging because one of the topics that we're going to discuss in today's episode, Malik Nabers officially ruled out for the second straight week. He has not yet cleared concussion protocol, so the Giants, they're going to be relying on Wan'Dale Robinson and Darius Slayton once again to do the heavy lifting in the passing game as receivers. Now, on top of that, the other topic that we want to discuss in today's episode, this offensive line. It's been awesome. We've been talking about them a lot lately. We did a full offensive line review a few days ago, but now we want to talk specifically about one individual who has transformed this offensive line, Jermaine Eluemunor. Alex, credit to you, credit to me, credit to Fireside Giants, because very early on in that offseason, we said, circle Jermaine Eluemunor's name. Take a look at him. He makes perfect sense. He's played under Carmen Bracillo before. He's a free agent. He's a damn good player. This would be a perfect signing for the Giants. And we even mentioned Greg Van Roten as being a player that the Giants should look at, and they ended up signing him as well. So we were way ahead of the curve on this one. The Giants ended up signing Jermaine Eluemunor, and so far, man, he's exceeded all expectations. Not only has he been a good player for the Giants, across all offensive tackles in the NFL, he has the most pass blocking snaps without surrendering a single sack this season, according to Pro Football Focus. He has been an absolute anchor in pass protection for the New York Giants. So, Malik Nabers or no Malik Nabers, we know that this Giants offense stands a fighting chance because their offensive line has improved so significantly this season. So, excited to go ahead and dive into these two topics and discuss what it means for this upcoming game in Week 6 and for the rest of the season. Before we do so, Alex, how are you doing today, my friend? And how excited are you by how Jermaine Eluemunor has played through the first 5 weeks of the season?
I'm doing real good. This is easily one of our best takes that has developed into reality. And ultimately, when we kind of targeted Jermaine Eluemunor, we had him on our radar months before the Giants signed him. And he was sitting there as a free agent. Like, it made so much sense. The Carmen Bracillo product, the Giants did not trust him. We didn't trust Evan Neal to rebound, and clearly that was the right decision not to have that faith there. You know, I think right now he's sitting behind Eluemunor, learning, maybe rediscovering some of his past talent, and just getting healthy first and foremost. That's the best possible thing that Evan Neal could be going through right now after 2 bad seasons and a couple injuries. So at the moment, this offensive line looks to be head and shoulders above anything we've seen in a decade from this team. It's not even close. We've talked about it recently, the signings and whatnot. I wanted to give Jermaine Eluemunor specifically a shout out. He's gone. I think he actually leads like the NFL right now with 201 straight snaps without giving up a sack. Pretty freaking good, if you ask me. Jermaine Eluemunor has been a rock solid right tackle for this team. He played last week, 41 snaps in pass protection, like 40, and he didn't give up a single pressure. He was absolutely phenomenal. He was the best offensive lineman of the week against the Seattle defense. Yeah, they were a little bit thin, but not giving up a pressure is pretty damn impressive. He's given up 10 this year, 4 of which came in against Cleveland, and they have a really good defensive front. So, we'll give him a break there. But in the last 2 weeks, he's given up 1 pressure combined. I just don't think people actually understand how important Jermaine Eluemunor's role has been for this team. Not only has he solidified this unit, but think about if you have a liability at right tackle, what that does to your offensive line, right? That means Daniel Jones has to now, or whoever's playing quarterback for an offensive line that has a bad right tackle, has to get out of the pocket, where then you're creating more opportunities for pressure to come from other places, or you're having to speed up the entire pace of your offense. And that's what the Giants have had to do the last couple seasons. Now they have a competent right tackle. And by the way, a 2-year, $14 million deal. That might be one of the best contracts the Giants have signed in a long, long time. Maybe aside from like Okereke, to be honest, or even Dexter Lawrence's contract's really favorable. But 2 years, $14 million for an above-average pass-blocking right tackle. And by the way, he's a good run blocker too. Don't get it twisted. He's a fine run blocker, big body, can move. But most of all, man, like what I love about Jermaine Eluemunor the most is that he loves to be a New York Football Giant. You know what I mean? Like this guy loves being a Giant, and we've seen players come and go. We've seen guys not live up to the bill. We've seen guys, fall under under the covers just because this team has been bad. And guys like, Kadarius Toney's in a practice squad now. Like, how many guys have we seen come and go as a product of bad coaching or bad performance and whatever? They didn't want to be here. Jermaine Eluemunor walked into this team and was like, I want to be a New York Giant, and I'm going to be a damn good one. And you know what I really love when players say stuff like that and then back it up with actual performance. You love to see that. Eluemunor has stood his ground and performed the way he's spoken, and I think that that's a really good sign of what this offensive line is made of, what the new kind of standard is for this unit, and hopefully, we were talking about being on the hot seat. Carmen Brasillo is one of those guys that should be here for a very long time after this year. I think that they've finally figured it out. It's been a decade in the making, but Anthony, the cohesion, the chemistry, the development, the growth, the veteran experience and leadership they've gotten out of these guys in just 5 weeks, I mean, I couldn't be happier. It's been such a long time coming.
Been a real long time coming. It's been a decade, it feels like, since the Giants had a good offensive line. But something you said there I thought was interesting, and I wanted to immediately respond to, Alex. You mentioned how you love when somebody steps in, a player steps in and backs up what they say, right? Well, I'll say that Carmen Brasillo has done the exact same thing as a coach, because when he had his introductory press conference and he was speaking with the media during training camp and discussing what he planned on implementing for this team, a lot of what he said was, I want to make this offensive line a unit. I want them to play with more cohesion. I want them to play together rather than as individuals. And we thought that was really exciting. That was like music to our ears when Carmen Brasillo said those things. And what have we seen through these first 5 weeks, Alex? We have seen an offensive line that plays as a unit, has cohesion, and plays together, not as individuals. So everything that he said, he backed it up. He got his unit to do exactly what he promised he would get this unit to do. So you said it right there. No matter who gets fired, no matter what happens in the future with this regime, hot seats and everything, Carmen Brasillo needs to stay with the New York Giants. He has done wonders with this offensive line, and I think that he is one of the most important individuals in the building right now, considering what we've seen in terms of growth from this unit through the first 5 weeks of the season, plus obviously preseason and training camp. So it's been really fun to watch. And hey, like you said, and as I said, all these stats about Jermaine Eluemunor, off the field, he's excellent. On the field, he's been excellent. He's everything that we dreamed for in a right tackle over the last several years. And man, we deserve it because we watched Evan Neal really struggle through the first 3 years. And, maybe that's an interesting topic to kind of branch off into here, Alex. Do we see a future for Evan Neal? Like, is this all she wrote for him? Or do you think that maybe, and, I don't really know if I have an answer either way, but I figure it's nice to throw out a hypothetical here and try and give Evan Neal a little bit of hype, maybe, if we can. Maybe sitting back for this season and kind of just regrouping and training and working hard behind the scenes. Maybe that's really what he needs, because he stepped into the NFL, clearly struggled, clearly was not ready for the speed of the professional game, struggles real badly, gets an injury in his rookie season that a lot of Giants fans seem to forget about, tries to bounce back from that, clearly playing through the injury, not playing well enough. Year 2, the wheels kind of fall off, right? He gets hurt again. He has a bunch of bad games. His confidence gets shaken. He gets into a battle in the media with the fans. Everything went wrong possible for Evan Neal in year 2. Now going into year 3, wasn't ready to return from that ankle injury. It was a misdiagnosis from the Giants. The training staff, the doctors messed that one up. And unfortunately, it had a really long-term effect on Evan Neal's recovery. So we do give him a lot of crap, and we do criticize the way that he played, and it's very easy to criticize because he was absolutely the worst right tackle in the NFL over the last 2 years. But you do have to also admit, this young kid that stepped into the NFL with a ton of talent and potential, everything that could have went wrong for him that was even outside of his control went wrong for him. And you do have to feel a little bit bad, in my opinion. I think he just had a lot of really bad, unlucky breaks. And now that leads me to this question. Is it over for Evan Neal, or does he have a chance one day to turn something around? Because anytime you have a Jermaine Eluemunor conversation, you have to highlight the fact that he is a massive upgrade over what Evan Neal was the last 2 years. But can Evan Neal upgrade himself? Can he work behind the scenes while Eluemunor is starting and maybe earn a role with the New York Giants in 2025? I think it's an interesting question to ponder and to pose, so I'm curious to get your take on it, Alex.
I'll give you the best possible example. Evan Neal's story is far from over. if we're in year 6 with Daniel Jones and we're still giving him time and people are still on his on his shoulders and giving him the respect and he's been playing much better football lately, why can't Evan Neal turn it around, right? Like, he absolutely can. Like I said earlier in the episode, the best possible thing for him right now is that he is sitting behind a good right tackle and a good coach, learning, getting healthy, getting better, and preparing. The Giants could not afford to keep throwing him into the fire the way they were. They were throwing him into the fire with basically no good training, diminishing results, and horrible fundamentals. Like, he was... It's almost like he worked all offseason to correct things, then got to training camp and forgot all of it immediately, right? Like, the coaching that he was getting was not good enough, and it wasn't really to his style, maybe. I don't know. Bobby Johnson's doing better in Washington. I don't know what was going on with that offensive line. But Evan Neal, he lost all of his confidence. He lost some of his physical qualities because of the injuries. But most of all, he lost the respect of the fan base, and the fans tore him to shreds, and he started lashing out. And once that happens, you got to disappear. You know what I mean? You got to disappear for a year and regain that trust and that hope. Because the Giants, I have no hope in Evan Neal right now. But in a year from now, I might. Because I'll have forgotten about everything. He will be healthy. He, obviously will be in a position where he's been learning for a whole season behind, Eluemunor and from Carmen Brasillo. I personally feel as though he couldn't be in a better spot than he is right now. My question. So here's how I envision kind of things unfolding. If anything were to happen to Andrew Thomas, knock on wood, I think the Giants would move Jermaine Eluemunor to left tackle. If anything were to happen to Jermaine Eluemunor, Evan Neal will be playing right tackle. So there are two ways that Evan Neal gets playing time here. Either something happens to AT or something happens to Eluemunor. Injuries happen in football. He has to be ready. I mean, there may be another player you have in mind. You like Kubis could be an option.
Well, I have another alternate scenario for him to get on the field. What if something happens with Greg Van Roten? What if either he gets injured or they decide, maybe he's not playing up to par and he gets taken out of the lineup? Then how do you fill that hole? Is that Josh Azedu going in? Is that Evan Neal going in at guard? Or is that moving Eluemunor to right guard and Evan Neal to right tackle? There are a few ways for him to get onto the field by the end of the season.
There is. There's many ways, but I mean, let me make it straight to the point. We don't want that, right? We do not want a situation where Evan Neal is starting meaningful football games for the Giants, right? I've said this 100 times. Disciplined teams that have disciplined players, they tend to not get hurt as much, right? Offensive linemen specifically, because they fall into each other, they get backed into each other, they fall into each other's legs and ankles and get, really, really hurt a lot of times. And the Giants have been playing much better, and what do you know? Less injury because of it. Again, knock on wood. So I do think that right now Jermaine Eluemunor has changed everything for this line. Like, John Running's a good player. Good player next to Andrew Thomas. I love that. JMS getting better. Good solid center as a second-year player right now. Greg Van Roten, he's good enough, right? He's not a good player, but he's good enough. And the reason he's good enough is because he has Jermaine Eluemunor next to him, right? Because he has a year of experience with him. Because he understands Carmen Brasillo's blocking system and blocking scheme. That's why he's good enough. But Jermaine Eluemunor, I mean, we know he's here next year and he should be starting for the next 2 years, in my opinion. But Greg Van Roten may not be here next year. Although I will say this, Anthony, I think that they should extend Greg Van Roten because he's going to get basically a veteran minimum contract. And having a guy that can start, even as a depth piece, is a good situation to be in. If the Giants spent a third-round pick on an offensive guard, which is usually like a good range for offensive guards, second round, you could even look into options there too, you don't have to start them immediately, right? Like, they can start immediately, a second rounder, third rounder maybe not so much, but they don't have to. You can have Greg Van Roten and a young player battle it out for a starting job. And that's what you're supposed to happen. That's what's supposed to happen. You don't want to inject third-round picks into those positions immediately. I think having a guy that could start, I mean, that brings the best out of everybody, in my opinion.
No, I agree with you. I think it's really important to add talent to bridge ways to younger talent, right? And I think that's what Greg Van Roten can be. And you say, that's what ideally would happen. Maybe that is what's happening. Maybe that's Evan Neal behind the scenes. Again, we haven't heard that he's been working at guard. In fact, we've heard the opposite. We've heard that he continues to work at tackle. But we also haven't heard anything about Evan Neal in several weeks because he's a backup and you don't hear much about those guys. So maybe he has been doing a little bit of guard work. Maybe it is something that they're talking about behind the scenes, and perhaps he is the guy that they're developing to take over after Greg Van Roten. It's totally possible. So, yeah, like we said, there are many different ways for Evan Neal to get on the field. we don't want to see Evan Neal get on the field this season because we like this starting five. And that right there, Alex, is something that we need to highlight. The Giants, through 5 weeks, have 5 starting offensive linemen. At this point last year, they had 10, double it, 10 different starting offensive linemen through the first 5 games of the season last year. That is a scary number. This number of 5 right now is a perfect number. Let's keep that going. Stay healthy. It's of the utmost importance. The New York Giants have to keep that offensive line healthy, but you do make some very good points. I could totally see Greg Van Roten being a candidate to extend here with the New York Giants as he continues to be a stable veteran presence, and we develop players behind the scenes to eventually take over. Maybe the story isn't fully written on Josh Zetu yet either. We mentioned Evan Neal. Maybe Josh Zetu can develop into that spot. Who knows? Or maybe the Giants make a splash in the upcoming free agency. I don't know. There are so many different ways that can get ironed out, but all I know is I feel confident and comfortable with a bunch of these offensive linemen that the Giants have right now. But again, back to the point of injuries, because we just mentioned Van Roten, and there are ways to get Evan Neal on the field. Well, now there's also an injury in the wide receiver core that we have to keep monitoring. This is week to week, and I think it's important to clarify there is no timeline for concussions. Of course, I'm talking about Malik Nabers here and the fact that he will miss a second straight week with a concussion. Yeah, usually players miss 1 week and they return. That's what happened to Darius Slayton. I think he had a concussion in week 2, still played in week 3. He didn't even miss a game. Some players miss a game. Some players miss 2. Adoree Jackson missed 2 games with a concussion in the 2023-24 season. Now, some players miss a much greater amount of time. I think it was Elijah Riley was a safety on the Giants practice squad, had a concussion in training camp, and I don't think he's even practicing yet. I think he's still dealing with symptoms. Another player that I'll bring up who is outside of football, Philip Hedl. New York Rangers fans might remember last year he had a concussion in the first 10 games of the season, didn't return all the way until the postseason. He actually left the country, went home to his original country of birth to go recover and be with his family during that very difficult time. So, oftentimes we see these concussions, we're like, oh man, that stinks. This player's going to be out for a week or 2, and then we get him back. Sometimes they're not back in a week or 2. Sometimes they're out for 6 months, like we saw with Philip Hedl of the New York Rangers. So I'm not trying to throw panic out there and lead Giants fans to believe that that's what's going to happen here at Malik Nabers. What I'm trying to say is this is truly one of those moments where Giants fans need to be patient. There is no rushing through a concussion injury. There's no rushing through any type of head or neck injury. Concussion protocol takes time, and the timeline is different for every single player every single time they have a concussion. So that's kind of it with Malik Nabers. We don't know when he's going to be healthy, but what we do know is he's making progress. He has advanced through the first 2 stages of concussion protocol. He's now, I think, in the 3rd stage, and he's ramping up because he did a little bit of route running and catching today in Friday's practice rather. So we are seeing him make some progress, just not quite enough to go ahead and play this upcoming Sunday. However, next week seems a lot more realistic now that he started to do a little bit more of those on-the-side practicing and route running things. So Malik Nabers, I think he'll be back soon enough. I didn't even mention the big controversy with Malik Nabers' concussion. I don't want to discuss it. I think it's stupid. If you guys know what I mean, you know what I mean. I'm going to leave it there.
Let's discuss it.
Okay, fine. Let's discuss it.
Let's discuss it. So Malik Nabers went to a Travis Scott concert, and he has a concussion, right? I just want to say, what is he, 21 years old? And listen, I'm going to give you a little explicit warning right now. If you have kids in the room, I'll give you a couple seconds to kind of mute it for them or put some headphones in. Who the fuck cares? Who the fuck cares? He's 21 years old. He went to a concert. He has no concussion symptoms. He just has to progress through running, like doing active motion on a football field. We're talking about physical activity, like running at full speed and at length so that he doesn't get winded, right? Like that's the process he's in right now. He doesn't have any light sensitivity or anything like that. His symptoms are over. Brian Daboll said it. It didn't even go against any protocols of the concussion protocol structure. Why do people give a shit? It's a complete non-story. People complain about how the New York media ran OBJ out of the freaking marketplace, and this is the type of bullshit stories that people run with to piss players off and to get them in trouble behind the scenes and to put their head coach in a weird spot where they now have to discipline a guy for going to see a concert who has no concussion symptoms and it's been 2 weeks already. Like, give me a break. It's a load of nonsense to me. Like, it's a ridiculous story. If we didn't even hear about it, nobody would have even thought thought about it. No, it wouldn't even be a freaking story if nobody knew. It freaking pisses me off that this is what we're talking about. We have a big game coming up on Sunday.
I like how the more intense you got and the more angry you got, the more intense the sirens behind you got. It was like watching a beautifully directed Scorsese scene. That was incredible. God really did his thing right there. Anyway, on Malik Nabers, the concussion, the Travis Scott concert, I also think it's stupid that people have such an adverse reaction to this. There's a few points that I want to make. Number one, Brian Dable knew he was going to the concert. He had the opportunity to tell him, don't go. You want to know how I know that? Because he wasn't the only player that went to the concert. Several New York Giants players went to the concert with Malik Nabers. So what does that tell you? The Giants knew he was going and they didn't have a problem with it. Now everybody's going to point to what Brian Dable said today in the media. And he said, I'm going to keep it all in-house. I think he just said that because he didn't want to give anybody anything to talk about. Why would he?
He never does.
Always keeps everything in-house. And what did he say at the end of that press conference, or after that question was asked, that everybody seems to be ignoring? He did not violate protocol. Brian Dable said that Malik Nabers did not violate protocol. So why do people think that they're going to discipline Malik Nabers if he did not violate protocol?
Also, they're probably sitting in like the VIP section, which is not directly in front of the stage. Like
that was something that somebody said to me on social media. They were like, "Yeah, Nabers is risking his health. He could get injured at the concert." I'm like, "Bro, what? You could get injured doing anything by that logic. He could walk down the staircase. Yeah, driving is more risky than sitting in a box at a concert. You know, there's everything that you do day to day. He could cut a chicken breast and cut his finger. That's more dangerous than sitting in a press box at a freaking Travis Scott concert in MetLife Stadium, no less, where he's treated like a VIP because he plays at MetLife Stadium. So the whole thing is ridiculous to me. Again, I understand why fans initially thought, oh man, that's not a good idea. You have a brain injury. You shouldn't be listening to loud music and seeing flashing lights. He's past that stage in concussion protocol where that would affect him. He's now just at the stage where he hasn't recovered enough to get hit. He can hear loud things. He can watch flashing lights and bright screens. He just can't get hit on a football field yet. He's got to progress through that aspect of it, and that's just because of timing. That only is because of how long it's been since he passed through those symptoms that he no longer has, though. That's the key thing. He no longer has the symptoms that would be affected by the flashing lights and by the loud music. So it's important to note, Nabers, I don't think he did anything wrong. He's 21 years old. He's living his life. And unfortunately, this is just the reality that he's going to have to get used to, where everything that he does is put under a microscope. He just doesn't know that yet because he is 21. He is young, and he hasn't gone through this yet, right? He didn't realize what the optics were going to be of him going to that concert. He didn't realize how it would be received because he hasn't gone through this just yet. But I thought Giants fans learned their lesson by now. After watching certain players have their talents completely wasted here and ran out of town for no good reason, haven't we learned our lesson not to get on the bad side of our best players? I mean, come on. Giants fans should know, like, OBJ had it with this team, and then he ended up getting traded. And I know everybody's going to say, well, we got Dexter Lawrence out of that. Yeah, even still, we've had other Giants players walk in here, get completely belittled by the fan base, and then sent out and go have success elsewhere. You know what? Xavier McKinney is even a good example. He's the best safety in the NFL right now. A lot of Giants fans called him trash because he missed a couple tackles last year in week 3, and now, boom, they didn't want him back, and he's not back. So you can find other examples if you want to justify this, but at the end of the day, Giants fans just need to be better. They have to have more respect for these players, not only as players, but as people, because their entire life is not just football. They are human beings. They have other wants and needs in their life, and Malik Nabers is a 21-year-old kid. Go have fun, enjoy your life, and also kill it on the football field like you have every single time you've been on one.
Yeah, I mean, listen, people suddenly think they're freaking brain surgeons. I don't understand what gives anyone the confidence to make a claim that he shouldn't have been at a concert. Like, give me a break. Ridiculous on top of that. That is not the reason he's not playing this week. Like, seriously? Like, people think that that's the reason that he shouldn't be at a the reason he didn't play this week is because he didn't get through the concussion protocol. It's as simple as that. So at the moment, that's a non-story. Just wanted to get that off my chest, and Anthony, same as you, because this is how we put players in a negative spotlight who have done nothing but dominate when on the football field. I mean, Nabers was our offense the first 4 weeks of the season, and he had a bad concussion. I mean, people think that you just get a concussion and return after a week. Guys, that's not how it works. I mean, we've seen players go through weeks and weeks and weeks of concussion. Was it like, I think Dane Belton was out for a couple weeks with a concussion last year, and like, you know, this stuff happens. Like, guys miss a couple weeks at a time, and the symptoms, it takes some time to get through the protocols, and if clearly it was more serious, and the symptoms were gone, but he wasn't able to progress to the physical part of it. It just is what it is, and I just think this is such a BS story. But anyway, looking on to Sunday night, I think that this offense is going to have a very similar look to what we saw this past weekend. Lots of Darius Slayton, lots of Wandale, and also Devin Singletary's not for sure playing in this game. They said he's still doubtful to play, questionable at best. So it could be another Tyrone Tracy masterclass we could be in for, my friends. So that'd be pretty fun. I'm excited to see how it goes, but listen, the Bengals are going to score points. Like this team is this is gonna be one of our biggest challenges of the year. They are on fire right now on terms of offensive production. So Daniel Jones is gonna have to answer the call. It's gonna be a shootout most likely. But this defense is playing excellent football, so I do think they will step up and help limit them to a degree. It'll be a fun game. I think it's gonna be a really fun game. Like maybe it shouldn't have been primetime a week ago, but now I'm like, yeah, this actually is a pretty good primetime game. It's going to be at least a fun one. Lots of offense, lots of opportunities. Hopefully, a lot of scoring. With the Giants coming out on top, of course. I think that it'll be a really fun game, and I'm looking forward to it. Hopefully, we can compound off the Seattle win and really give it to the Bengals, because they are 1-4. They're a loss away from their season ending. Let's end that shit early. I think that'd be kind of fun.
Yeah, I mean, the Giants are at home. They're 2-3 versus a 1-4 Bengals team, and somehow they're 6-point underdogs. They should take that personally. The Giants should be pissed off by that. They should say, we are underdogs in this game at home, prime time, bright lights. We have a better record than them. Yeah, they need to play pissed off. That's what the New York Giants need to do. And as I keep saying, this is all going to come down to the quarterback play. It's Joe Burrow versus Daniel Jones. That's the way that I'm looking at this game. That would probably lead you to bet on Joe Burrow. The fact that Daniel Jones is 1-14 in primetime probably leads you to bet on Joe Burrow as well. But this is kind of make or break for Daniel Jones. If he's ever going to spark, if he's ever going to say, hey, screw it, I'm playing balls to the walls, I'm throwing dimes downfield, I'm going back to 2019 rookie season Danny Dimes, he's got to do it this week, because this is such an important game considering his primetime record, where the Giants are in the standings. They get a win here, it changes the entire course of the season. So if we want to really buy back in and say, yeah, Daniel Jones, maybe he does have the clutch gene, maybe he is a franchise quarterback, well, he could change a lot of people's minds and get them back on his side with a win on Sunday night over the Bengals. So it's going to be a very interesting game. It's going to be a very exciting one. And obviously tomorrow we'll have any more updates for you regarding injuries as well, and more discussions about the New York Giants and all of that excellent New York Giants content that you yearn for on the daily right here on Fireside Giants. So make sure to leave a like if you enjoyed this episode. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. Ring the bell so you do not miss an episode. And comment your thoughts down below in the comment section. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, please make sure to leave us a 5-star review. Go ahead and follow us on all of our social media channels at Fireside Giants. Without further ado, catch you all on the next one. Have a good one, and let's go Giants.
Perfect.